You imagine going back, yesterday, last year, your childhood. You imagine changing something, stopping a mistake, preventing a tragedy, fixing what went wrong. And you assume it's just a matter of technology. That if we could build the right machine, bend space-time the right way, generate enough energy, we could do it. We could travel backward through time. But what if I told you the universe has already decided? What if the laws of physics don't just make time travel difficult, they make it impossible in a way that's deeper, stranger, and more absolute than any engineering challenge? What if causality itself is protected by a mechanism so fundamental that even if you built a perfect time machine, reality would destroy it before you could use it? Stay with me, because this isn't speculation. This is what happens when you actually work through the mathematics of time travel. When you take general relativity seriously and follow it to its conclusions. What you find is that the universe doesn't just discourage time travel, it actively prevents it. Through quantum mechanics, through thermodynamics, through principles so basic, so non-negotiable, that they might as well be written into the fabric of existence itself. And when you understand why, when you see what would happen if time travel were possible, you'll realize the universe is protecting itself from something far worse than paradox. Let's start with what you believe. You believe time travel is prevented by paradoxes, the grandfather paradox. You go back and kill your grandfather before your father is born, which means you're never born, which means you never went back to kill him, which means you were born, which means you did go back. Contradiction, paradox, impossible. And you assume that's why time travel can't work, because it would create logical contradictions that reality can't tolerate, right? But here's the question that should shatter that whole picture. Why does the universe care about logic? Think about it. Physics doesn't run on logic. Physics runs on differential equations, on conservation laws, on symmetries and field theories and quantum amplitudes. Nowhere in the Schrödinger equation is there a clause that says, and contradictions are forbidden. Nowhere in Einstein's field equations is there a line that says paradoxes shall not exist. The laws of physics don't care about your intuitions about causality. They just describe how matter and energy evolve through space-time. And if you solve those equations, if you actually work through the mathematics, you find something shocking. Time travel is allowed by general relativity. Not just theoretically, actually, explicitly. There are exact solutions to Einstein's equations that contain closed time-like curves, paths through space-time that loop back on themselves that let you travel to your own past. The Gödel universe contains them. Rotating black holes contain them. Wormholes, if they exist, could contain them. The mathematics doesn't forbid time travel. The mathematics permits it. So the paradoxes aren't a logical problem, they're a physical one. And the universe doesn't solve them by forbidding time travel through some kind of cosmic censorship. The universe solves them by destroying anything that tries to create closed time-like curves before they can form. Let me tell you something. In the 1990s, Stephen Hawking proposed what he called the chronology protection conjecture. The idea is simple. There's some law of physics we haven't discovered yet that prevents closed time-like curves from forming. Not because they're logically contradictory, but because something in the physics itself, something in quantum mechanics probably, makes them unstable, makes them collapse, makes them impossible to maintain. And we now know what that something is. It's quantum fluctuations. It's the uncertainty principle. It's the fact that vacuum isn't empty. Here's what happens when you try to build a time machine. Let's say you create a wormhole, a tunnel through space-time connecting two different points. You manipulate one end, accelerate it, create a time differential between the two mouths. Now you have a path that lets you go in one end and come out the other in your own past. You've created a closed time-like curve. Congratulations, you've built a time machine. But the moment you do, the very instant the closed time-like curve is about to form, quantum field theory says something catastrophic happens. Virtual particles, the temporary fluctuations in the quantum vacuum, start traveling around the loop. They go through the wormhole, arrive in their own past, interfere with themselves, and create an infinite feedback loop. The energy density at the chronology horizon, the boundary where time travel becomes possible, diverges to infinity. Space-time curvature becomes infinite. The wormhole collapses, violently, immediately, before you can use it. Do you see what happens? The universe doesn't forbid time travel through logic, it forbids it through physics, through quantum mechanics destroying any structure that would permit closed time-like curves. Not because of paradoxes, because of energy. Because the quantum vacuum won't tolerate the feedback loop. If you want to understand how the universe actually works, not just how it looks, but how it works, hit that subscribe button. Let's find things out together. Now I want to take this deeper. Because the real reason time travel is impossible isn't just about quantum fluctuations destroying wormholes. It's about what time travel would do to causality itself, to the entire structure of physics as we know it. Every law of physics we have depends on causality, on the idea that causes precede effects, that the past determines the future, not the other way around, that information flows forward through time, never backward. This isn't just a convenient assumption, this is built into the mathematics. The wave function evolves forward in time according to the Schrödinger equation. Entropy increases forward in time according to the second law of thermodynamics. The arrow of time points one direction, and that direction defines what we mean by cause and effect. But if you allow closed time-like curves, if you allow information to flow backward in time, then causality breaks, not just in one place, everywhere. The entire structure collapses. Let's be honest about what this means. Imagine you send a single photon back in time, just one. That photon arrives in the past and interacts with something, changes something, and now that change propagates forward, affecting everything else, including the future you who sent the photon back. So the conditions that led you to send the photon have changed. Maybe now you don't send it, or you send it at a different time, or with different energy. But any of those changes alters the photon's interaction in the past, which changes the future, which changes whether you send it, which changes the past, which changes the future, infinitely. You don't get a paradox. You get an infinite regress. A feedback loop with no stable solution. The timeline becomes undefined, not contradictory, undefined. Like asking what's north of the North Pole. The question doesn't have an answer because the framework that would give it meaning has broken down. And here's the devastating part. If even one closed time-like curve exists anywhere in the universe, causality breaks everywhere. Because information can propagate. A photon from the time machine could travel to another galaxy, interact with matter there. That matter could send signals back. Eventually, the entire universe becomes contaminated with acausal information, with effects that precede their causes, with feedback loops that have no beginning and no end. The whole structure of physical law, everything that lets us predict, explain, or understand anything, dissolves. This is what the universe is protecting itself from. Not paradoxes, collapse. Total breakdown of the causal structure that makes physics possible. Think about thermodynamics. The second law says entropy always increases. That's what gives time its arrow. That's what distinguishes past from future. But if you allow time travel, you can violate the second law. Take a low entropy system, send it back in time, and suddenly you have lower entropy in the past than you had before. The arrow of time reverses locally. And once you allow that in one place, you can't contain it. The entire thermodynamic gradient that makes time flow forward starts to unravel. Or think about quantum mechanics. The wave function evolves unitarily forward in time. Information is preserved. Probabilities add up to 1. But if you allow closed time-like curves, you can create situations where the wave function has to satisfy contradictory boundary conditions in the past and future simultaneously. You can send a quantum state back to interfere with itself before it was created. The unitarity breaks down. The probabilities don't add up anymore. Quantum mechanics stops working. Do you see the pattern? Every fundamental theory we have assumes causality, assumes time flows forward, assumes the past is fixed and the future is open. And if you break that assumption, if you allow even one instance of time travel, the entire edifice crumbles. The universe cannot permit time travel because time travel is not compatible with the laws that govern the universe. Here's the part that keeps me up at night. We don't actually know what enforces chronology protection. We know it happens. We know quantum fluctuations diverge at chronology horizons. We know closed time-like curves are unstable. But we don't have a complete theory of quantum gravity that tells us exactly why. We're missing something fundamental, some principle deeper than general relativity, deeper than quantum mechanics, that makes causality non-negotiable. And until we find that principle, we can't be completely certain time travel is impossible. We can't prove it with mathematical certainty. We can only observe that every attempt to construct a closed time-like curve in theory leads to instability. That every solution to Einstein's equations with time travel requires exotic matter with negative energy density that probably doesn't exist. That every mechanism we can imagine fails for some physical reason. But there's no theorem, no final proof, just a mounting pile of evidence that the universe really doesn't want you messing with causality. And maybe that should terrify us, because if we're wrong, if there's some loophole we haven't found, some configuration of matter and energy that permits stable, closed, time-like curves, then we're one experiment away from destroying causality, from breaking the arrow of time, from making the entire history of the universe undefined. One mistake, one successful time machine, and everything unravels. But here's another possibility, one that's even stranger. Maybe time travel isn't impossible. Maybe it's just incredibly restricted. Maybe the universe allows closed time-like curves, but only ones that are self-consistent, only timelines that don't contradict themselves. You can go back in time, but only to do things that already happened, only to fulfill the past, not change it. You can't kill your grandfather because you didn't kill your grandfather. The timeline is fixed, predetermined, and your journey back in time was always part of that timeline. This is called the Novikov self-consistency principle, and it's disturbing in a completely different way. Because if it's true, then you have no free will when you time travel. You can go back, but you can't change anything. The universe forces you to act in whatever way makes the timeline consistent. You're not an agent anymore. You're a puppet dancing on strings made of causality, forced to perform the exact actions that led to your present. You travel back to save someone, but you fail, because you always failed. Because the timeline in which they die is the only consistent timeline, and the universe won't let you deviate from it. Is that better than time travel being impossible, or worse? I honestly can't tell. Let me tell you something. The reason the universe forbids time travel might be deeper than physics, might be deeper than causality. Maybe time travel is impossible because possibility itself requires an arrow of time. The concept of could versus did only makes sense if the future is open and the past is closed. If you allow the past to change, then nothing is fixed. Nothing is determinate. Reality becomes a blur of might-have-beens with no actual is anywhere. And consciousness, your subjective experience of existing, of making choices, of moving from past to future, depends on that structure. Depends on the past being determinate and the future being open. If you collapse that distinction, if you make the past mutable, then the subjective arrow of time disappears. And without that arrow, there's no experience, no consciousness, no you. Time travel doesn't just break physics, it breaks the possibility of being. But here's what I find beautiful about this. Here's what redeems the impossibility. If time travel is forbidden, if the past is truly fixed and the future truly open, then you are free. Free from the weight of infinite counterfactuals. Free from the tyranny of wanting to undo what's done. The past is sealed. You can't change it. And that means you don't have to carry the burden of wishing you could. You made mistakes. You suffered. You lost things you can never get back. And you cannot fix any of it because the universe won't let you. The timeline is closed behind you, locked, sealed, protected by the fundamental laws of reality, so let it go. Not because you're wise, not because you're healed, because physics gives you no other choice. The past is inaccessible, permanently. And that's not a tragedy, that's liberation. The universe forbids time travel to protect causality, to protect the arrow of time, to protect you from the infinite loop of trying to fix what cannot be fixed. Move forward. It's the only direction that exists. If this twisted your brain a little bit, good. That means it's working. I'll see you in the next one.